So I'll try and stay to the challenges that you've described. Clearly, implementation is going to be the big challenge in all of this. And it will require integration of efforts across the political spectrum as well as administration and governance and citizens. And how do you bring, probably for the first time in our urban history, how do you bring all of these stakeholders together and start thinking in one direction? Not an easy thing, as you can imagine, in the Indian context, but actually not easy in any context. So we are not peculiar in that respect. I believe that clarity of purpose really will make a big difference. If we can explain what are the benefits that accrue from adopting this kind of a shift of technology. Essentially, we are, through the Smart City mission, trying to make a paradigm shift in the way we think about cities, the way we manage them, how we execute projects, how we involve citizens in that conversation, and how we actually deliver outcomes to the cities. So it's a tall order, but what better time than now to start on this, especially as Karuna described, the global situation is one that seems to be conducive to India taking some kind of leadership and showing a lot of responsibility. So the Smart Cities mission certainly gives us a very good context in which we can talk about technological transformation, and it's a much needed transformation. I have only about 6 slides, and let me just go through those slides and share with you some thoughts. None of this is particularly new to you. It's just a particular combination of thoughts which I'd like to share. Okay, well, at the end of the 19th century, there was a radical new idea that came about. This is a plan that represents the garden cities of tomorrow. There was an innovative thinker, Ebenezer Howard, in England, who said, well, you know, we've got to clean up our cities. All these industrial cities need to shift in terms of the way they plan themselves, the way they use energy. Right up there, I don't know if you can read it, but it says a group of slumless, smokeless cities. So he wanted to create all these, what seemed to be suburban developments that actually allowed people to think of a better quality of life. Imagine industrial cities like London, completely polluted, sewage flowing in many parts of the city, in the streets of London. It didn't have full sanitation even. And imagine in that kind of situation where they were making a transition from different power sources, gas was available, electricity, transportation was being revolutionized. Imagine in that kind of a situation, Ebenezer Howard comes forward and says, let's make smokeless, slumless cities, and let's build them around our metropolitan centers. So radical ideas, we can't really compete with the 19th century for that kind of radical thinking. But we are certainly wanting to be inspired by the fact that if 100 years and more people were able to think about things like this, we should be able to do better than that. And in that respect, really, we come to concepts like smart cities, and this is borrowed from the IBM smart cities definition, which they prepared in 2009. But what I'd like to bring your attention to is the circular shape of these diagrams. The fact that ultimately what we are talking about when we say smart grids are needed in our cities, we're really saying that we need a way to manage our energy, especially electricity supply, in such a way that we integrate systems across all domains, and we begin to make all of these work in an integrated whole. So the smart grid is a backbone to this integration of all functions of the city. It's a necessary component. It's not an option. And I think this is what needs to be appreciated. This is not about purchasing a system. This is about transforming the way the city works. So that there is, in a sense, if I may use a term used in a different context, a kind of a circular economy which is created, so that we can monetize savings, we can put them back into the grid, so to speak. Users can actually feel like they're part of an intelligent city management system. So this is a much needed transformation as we speak. We have to recognize the fact that cities occupy only 2% of the Earth's surface, but they consume 78% of the world's primary energy. And they produce 60% of global emissions. However, they also produce a staggering majority of, or the staggering proportion of the wealth of all our societies, all our countries. Cities produce that wealth. So smart grids are really essential to make those cities produce more wealth, if I can put it in a very crass way. But more than that, if we produce wealth and if we make it possible for everybody to rise out of poverty, we will be able to deliver all-round equitable development. And that ultimately is the goal of the Smart Cities mission. Create jobs, create livelihoods, secure livelihoods, and sustain livelihoods so that everyone in the city can actually afford a better quality of life. That's the thinking behind all of this talk about smart cities, and we should bear that as a reminder. The smart city model focuses on the development of dense, socially mixed neighborhoods with healthy public green spaces, promotion of transit-oriented development, smarter transport systems, including bus rapid transit, bicycle sharing, electric vehicles. This is the vision, and it's wonderful to see that the Indian economy is beginning to get integrated in such a way that we are able to converge our efforts and produce the context for this kind of dreaming, I would say. But the lifeblood of these cities is going to be uninterrupted power supply. We want to see a future where no child has to sit under a street light and study for his or her exam. And the night sky is so clear that if a child looks up, when the mother says, look at the moon, the child is able to see the moon. So it's both about providing that uninterrupted power supply where it's needed to everybody, and cleaning up the environment also. And that benefit that we get out of managing our energy sources better is precisely the reward from the idea of smart grids. Smart grids aren't a different type of thing as such. That's the way we would like to look at it. It's really a smarter way to integrate all our systems. And for that, we need to shift in terms of our use of technology, the way we connect all our infrastructure and so on. So I think the previous panel also talked a lot about standardization. It's absolutely essential if we need to integrate all our different functions that use, that produce power as a cumulative outcome. I won't dwell on this. I think you all know this better than I do. However, let me just briefly describe what looks like an emerging scenario out of these 20 smart cities that Karuna also mentioned that have been selected. We have 4 cities that have clearly identified the smart grid as part of their transformation plan. This is not the only possibility, but these are the 4 that have used the term smart grid as a way to describe their ambitions. There are other cities like Kakinada in Andhra Pradesh that hasn't said smart grid, but are talking about smart energy management. So this is just a very small sampling of what we are looking at. And as you can see on the slide, the cities have described the overall system that they want to install and the overall requirements. However, the thinking about how this can be delivered will require, as Karuna rightly put it, will require a coordinated effort. Everybody involved in that city will need to sit together and plan this out. And we have certain structural challenges before us with regard to doing that. One big challenge is that electricity tariffs are not decided by the city. Okay, so how does a city deliver benefits to its citizens, who are the primary stakeholders, on this kind of, in this sector as such, on this kind of a context? How does the city do that? The grid distribution is not managed by the city, once again. So how does it control its access to power, and how does it appropriate for us to see as a concomitant of the smart power management? How do we focus on interoperability and M2M architecture standards? Remember that the people leading the smart city developments are very good, very smart city leaders, but they may not know in-depth knowledge on this particular subject. How do they begin to understand M2M and so on? So capacity building is necessary. We need planning standards for rooftop panels, something as simple as accessing people's roofs. And installing rooftop solar is itself such a big challenge, both legally in terms of development regulations as well as behavior patterns, how consumers really behave. Citizen engagement, therefore, becomes one of the key anchors for our emerging scenario. And lastly, reliability and security. Citizen consumer forums need to be developed so that they can start being educated about the benefits of something like a smart grid. Elected representatives need to understand this better. This is the future, clearly. There is no way to avoid it, but it's a long way to go in terms of achieving this as a reality. With that, I thank you very much. Thanks.